News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Erica Herskowitz. A possible de-escalation in the Middle East conflict rippled through markets today with oil falling and stocks soaring. The Dow and Nasdaq added 1.33%. The S&P rose more than 1%. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.35%. The 2-year Treasury yield at 3.84%. President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning that he's delaying a threat to go after Iran's energy infrastructure after what he called very good and productive conversations with the country. The president discussed it this morning on his way back to Washington from West Palm Beach, Florida.
They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal, too. We're going to get together today by probably phone because it's very hard to find a country. It's very hard for them to get out, I guess.
Trump says his demands are simple.
Got to be no more wars, no more nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons anymore. They're agreeing to that. Any of that stuff is no deal.
Trump says the U.S. is speaking with a top person in Iran, but not the new supreme leader. And he says the Strait of Hormuz could be jointly controlled by him and the new Ayatollah. More from the U.S. ambassador to the European Union, Andy Puzder.
It would be an incredible good news for the Iranian people if this conflict were to come to an end. I think one of the difficulties is probably that it's hard to tell who's in charge in Iran. If I had to rely on anybody for that information, it would be the President of the United States.
U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Andy Puzder, tells Bloomberg's Oliver Crooks it's important for Europe to get involved with reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Talks with the U.S. have not been confirmed on the Iranian side, as we hear from Bloomberg's Jumana Bersechi in Dubai.
There hasn't been anything from the Iranian side to signal that that indeed is the case. And if anything, we've had a denial from Iranian-affiliated media saying that no direct or indirect discussions have been taking place. We haven't heard from individuals themselves, so key figures like the foreign minister, Abbas Arakchi, or the speaker of the parliament, who have tended to be very active on social media over the last couple of days.
Bloomberg's Jumana Bersechi reports Iranian state media are accusing the president of trying to manipulate the energy market. Brent crude saw one of the biggest intraday drops on record after the president's post. It fell as much as 14%. Right now, Brent crude is down more than 11%, trading at $98 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate is $88 a barrel. Speaking at the CERAWeek conference in Houston today, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright said oil from U.S. reserves started flowing last week.
United States oil from our stocks started flowing last Friday afternoon. I saw in the press, they can't do it for 3 weeks. It's never been done before. Oil started to flow out of U.S. stocks last Friday afternoon. Japan has also moved quickly. Some nations will move more slowly. Some nations don't even have oil and gas stocks. Yeah. But this is what the IEA was created for, right? It was used 4 years ago to lower gasoline prices to help election results. That's not what that's not what Strategic Petroleum Reserve stocks are for.
U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright. And with the markets whipsawing, Fed Reserve Governor Stephen Miron says it's too soon to change his outlook for 4 rate cuts this year.
Central banking, Federal Reserve wisdom is that oil shocks hit headline inflation, but they don't really pass that much into core by as much as they do into headline. And the two ways that you would want to respond to, and so therefore you typically look through an oil shock.
Fed Governor Steve Miron also appeared on Bloomberg Surveillance. We also heard from Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee this morning, and he told CNBC the Fed might need to raise or lower interest rates depending on how the war plays out. Speed may have been a factor in last night's deadly plane crash at New York's LaGuardia Airport. The airline data website Flight Radar 24 reports the Air Canada Express plane was traveling between 93 and 105 miles an hour when it slammed into a Port Authority fire truck, which was summoned to inspect a United jet after flight attendants reported feeling ill from an odor on board. The pilots were killed on impact. The NTSB and other federal agencies are continuing to investigate. Federal immigration officers have begun to show up at airports after President Trump ordered them to assist with security during the Homeland Security shutdown. The Associated Press spotted a few ICE agents at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson this morning. President Trump posted on social media that he doesn't want ICE to wear masks at the airport like they do during immigration enforcement, but he warned that he will bring in the National Guard if ICE agents aren't enough to deal with the funding impasse. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Erica Herskowitz. Herskowitz, and this is Bloomberg.